Hello, hello. Welcome back to Loki's Library. And if you are new here, welcome. I'm your librarian, Katrina. On Sundays, I do this thing called Books and Booze, where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. This month, we are looking at The Humble Farmer, making this week's book Dirt to Soil, One Family's Journey into Regenerative Agriculture by Gabe Brown. The accompanying cocktail is, well, it's got Oreos, lemon, gummy worms, vodka, and Kahlua in half and half. Now, those are all the ingredients. You soak the gummy worms in vodka, which you use the vodka for the cocktail. You add the Kahlua, the half and half. It's basically a slight twist on a Kahlua and cream, I think. Anyways, you prep the cup with the lemon wedge. You just run the lemon wedge, and then Oreos. You dunk it in crushed Oreos. So I only have the vodka, Kahlua, gummy worms. Whatever. Let's do this. Gabe Brown. Oh no, I'm going to have to get vodka on my hands. Ooh. Guess what? Gummy worms soaked in vodka fall apart. Ugh. Ew, they're falling apart. They're slimy and gross, just like real worms. I mean, worms are good for the soil, but ew. Gabe Brown married into the farm, sort of. Like, he always wanted to be a farmer, but his wife wanted to get away from the farm, so there was a little bit of back and forth there, but in the end, as women always do, and no shame or blame there, I do it all the time with my husband. We cave and give the men we love what they want. We just do. The actual proportions are half ounce of vodka, an ounce of Kahlua, and the rest is the half and half. Those are the actual proportions in the cocktail itself. So his wife wanted to get away from the farm. He wanted to be a farmer. She was a farmer's daughter. So she ended up back on the farm. One of 3 farmers' daughters, which is relevant in that while Brown and her would work with her parents on the land, when it was time for the parents to retire, rather than letting Brown buy them out of their farm, they split the farm into 3 and gave each daughter a chance to buy equal parts, which I kind of see their perspective, but I also really, really see his. He was there actually working the land, and he kind of got screwed there because after he makes improvements, the other daughters get to come in and benefit from that. So I kind of get his point too. He ended up buying a third of it, and then I think her aunt and uncle had land and nobody that wanted it, so they bought her aunt and uncle out too, and ended up with a fairly decent sized little ranch. Water under the bridge, right? The fact that her parents sold to 2/3 to the sisters, he worked it and had it like yoinked out from under him is water under the bridge. It's the no point crying over spilt milk, right? So he purchased his 1/3 and then the property from the aunt and uncle, and away he went. Water under the bridge for the rest of it. So Brown started out with traditional farming, till the soil, let the land lay fallow between plantings, limit the livestock, or go for bread lines only. Bread, B-R-E-D, specific lines of stock, not bread lines like, you grow the wheat and you bake the bread. English and her homonyms, man. And then he had 4 bad years, like back to back to back bad years. It's not like it was 1 year was bad and then a decade later, the second year. It was 4 years, boom, 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 of hailstorms that decimated his crops, floods washing away the topsoil, blizzards where the baby cows died en masse, leaving him with barely a herd to speak of. Let's try this. Kahlua and cream. I like Kahlua and cream. It was enough to make him rethink what he was doing, how he was handling his farm, how he was managing it, and not the being a farmer. Right? He liked being a farmer. He knew he still wanted to be a farmer. He knew there had to be a better way, and those 4 bad years forced him to acknowledge that traditional farming was not working, that it was making things worse actually, and he made soil health his business because without the land to grow things on, you have no farm. So that became his mission, and he came up with the 5 metrics of soil health. First off, you limit the disturbances. Limit mechanical, chemical, physical disturbance. Now note, it doesn't mean don't have livestock. Livestock is going to disturb the land, but it's a more natural process. They have to walk somewhere, right? So it doesn't mean don't have livestock. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Livestock is extremely beneficial for soil health, not only for the manure the livestock provides, but because the weight of the animals helps to naturally and minimally turn the soil. The animal weight helps to mix in the manure with the soil. Tillage, however, highly detrimental. I mean, healthy soil is packed with nutrients that form an interconnected web of fungi and bacteria, healthy fungi and bacteria. So tilling literally shreds those networks, leaving just dirt. Removes the soil from it, leaves you with just dirt. Barren landscape, right? Soil should be covered. Not with a tarp. It's not like you're going out there with a big blue tarp and covering the land. That's going to prevent water from getting to the soil, and it needs the water. to help turn things around. But with natural protectants like cover crops, soil wants to grow things. Give it something to grow. All right. That's literally its job. Give it something to do. Now he has his own choice of cover crops, which work beautifully with his ranch in North Dakota, which that's where he lives. So he picks something that's going to work with his area. He says point blank in the book, if you unless you're like literally right next door to him, he's not going to tell you what he grows because it's not necessarily going to be what's ideal for your ranch. He's not saying cover crops won't work. He's saying the opposite. They will work, but you got to find what works for your ranch. What are the needs that you need to provide for your ranch? So his cover crops work beautifully in North Dakota, would not work as well in Nevada. Different needs out here. Diversity. Diversity is our strength in crops. I'm not saying diversity is bad. I'm just so sick of the DIE. I like had a knee-jerk reaction when he said diversity. I'm like, what? Oh wait, no, he's not talking about let's all come together in a big kumbaya moment. He's talking about diversity in crops. All right. Monoculture is horrible for the environment. And with your cover crops, don't just grow clover. Mix that clover with other crops so that your soil has a variety to pull from for its own nutritional needs. And the earth is alive, basically. All parts of it. Feed the earth and she'll feed you back. It's kind of the takeaway I got from this book. It's a big one, right? Living roots. Maintaining living roots in the soil helps to maintain structural integrity of the soil, which goes back to the tilling. When you're tilling the soil, you are tearing those roots to shreds, which kills them and then destroys soil integrity, leaving you with a large dirt patch and nothing grows on it except for weeds. Animals. Again, let nature help you with any soil turning that might be needed. That's it. Don't go out there with a hand plow. He has a no-till plow, which allows him to plant without cutting the root structures that are so integral to the soil health. And animals will help you turn things over. Like the last week's book was talking about the pig aerators, where the pigs go in and turn over the compost for them when they pour corn on it. Yeah. And I get why everything he's saying is absolute anathema to modern farmers. And it's not even the not using the herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, which are so prevalent on large farms. And a lot of farmers would probably even agree with if they didn't need that shit to keep the pests in line because they've been fighting nature for so long. It's the no-tilling. Look, I Googled this because I was like, well, how long have we been tilling for? We've been tilling for like 4,000 years, 5,000 at this point, because the first plow was invented in Mesopotamia. So 5,000 years we've been tilling the soil. Farming is 12,000 years old. So, I would argue, however, prior to the Industrial Revolution, humanity was not capable of tilling deeply enough to cause problems or cause the problems that modern agriculture experiences. But yeah. Like Salatin from last week's book, Brown is all too happy to share his knowledge with everyone and highlights how, in a very short time, he turned his ranch around. And he walks you through how, with cover crops being a very important part of that, but not the be-all, end-all, right? He stopped fighting nature, basically. He stopped seeing the elements as things to be contained and controlled and started going, how can I make this work for me? And he talks about his transition away from the traditional beef industry, right, which has always been about grow them big, grow them strong, grow the biggest cows you can. And you want those baby calves to be weighing 1,000 pounds at, 8 months old. And he moved to smaller stocks, smaller cows that are hardier and more able to withstand some of the harsh weather that North Dakota produces. And they're more useful for regenerative agriculture because they weigh less. They are doing less damage to the earth, but they're still helping to turn over the soil in a natural way. He talks about his transition to chickens, which he didn't think he would ever work with because when he was first getting his farm up and running, he had to take outside work to help meet the bills. And one of those things he did was work at a large poultry place. And it's grim. It's grim what he describes. Like his job was to go through and pull the dead chickens out of the cages each morning. And we're talking like 10, 11 chickens crammed into these tiny little cages, and he'd have to pick out the dead ones. What a grim way to start your day. I wouldn't want chickens either if that had been my job. But now he sees just how vital they are to a healthy farm. Again, they help to break up the compost. They help to keep flies down. They help to keep pests at bay. God, I was just vividly reminded of the book I read way back in the beginning, Frank Decotter's Mao's Great Famine, right? Where the Great Leap Forward, where Mao claimed war against the birds because the birds were attacking the crops. Only the birds weren't attacking the crops. They were attacking the pests that were eating the crops. And so when they killed all the birds, there was even more famine because all the bugs came in and were unchecked and just ate the crops. That's kind of what we're talking here. He stopped fighting with that and started letting the birds come in, and the birds killed the bad bugs, not just the chickens, but wildlife. Anyways, that was a tangent. Where was I? Oh, he talks about how he handled the inheritance question with his own kids, especially since his son was gung-ho about following in Brown's footsteps, while his daughter wanted to be very far away from the farm. But he talked about it with his kids. He's like, this is how I want to handle this. And the kids agreed, and everything was fair. Everybody was happy with what was decided. And I really loved how, after the deep dive into the 5 principles of soil health, he breaks down the science of why it works. He talks about carbon cycling. What resource concern are you trying to fix? Do you have low potassium in your soil, low carbon, low nitrogen, right? How do you determine how much seed you need to generate your cover crop that you want to grow? He gives you some simple formulas. How all of this helps with water availability, and not just water that falls from the sky, but the groundwater. And how do you make sure that it stays in your soil and doesn't just wash away the topsoil, leaving you even worse off than before? He talks about how a healthy ecosystem on a farm is practically pest and weed proof, right? If you have a healthy ecosystem, pests can't get a toehold. Weeds can't get a toehold. Healthy predators come in and kill the pests, removing the need for pesticides. The cover crops you grow are going to choke out the weeds, removing the need for herbicides. The healthy balance in the soil ensures the growth of good fungus, so you don't need a fungicide. All of this, it's literally just nature working in harmony with herself, and the farmer being a steward, basically, just overseeing the land and making sure that nothing truly catastrophic happens. He talks about nutrient cycling and making use of the natural nitrogen that just floats through the air. And if you read Project Hail Mary by Andrew Weir, you'll learn there's a lot of nitrogen just kind of naturally available out there. It's actually a fairly large part of the atmosphere. I breathe oxygen, yes, but there's nitrogen in there too, buddy. He teaches you how to harness that for soil health, right? It's free floating. You don't need to enrich your soil with nitrogen from some big agricultural conglomerate. All you need to do is plant crops that are going to pull that nitrogen naturally into the soil. Those are the cover crops. He does talk about crop rotation and how to actively plan this for the best results, because, yeah, you should not be leaving your land completely fallow. That's what leaves you open to topsoil erosion from floods and hailstorms and everything else. There's a whole chapter where he discusses the contact he's had with other farmers who reached out to him, used his ideas, and experienced spectacular results on their own farms. I mean, I think the one that stood out the most to me was a firefighter turned farmer in North Carolina who started with 30 acres and within 5 years had experienced such phenomenal results that he was able to expand his operation to 1,000 acres. And that's not a typo or a misspeak. It's from 30 acres to 1,000 acres in 5 years. That's phenomenal growth. This book was very easy to read. It was filled with good information. It makes me eager to grow my own healthy and flavorful net vegetables in my own little dirt patch right here in Nevada, because he talks about how soil health improves the flavor profile of the vegetables. So you can get away from these kind of bland, flavorless vegetables you could buy at basically every grocery store, because they're all growing from these monocrop agricultural settings. So they're not the freshest, most flavorful, most healthy things you can be eating. Healthier than Oreos. I am going to say that they're buying a bag of carrots from Winco or Rayleigh's or Costco or wherever is going to be healthier for you than buying a bag of Oreos or a bag of gummy worms, which apparently has dissolved entirely, which is just disgusting, but whatever. Yeah, y'all saw me put the worm in there, right? It is gone. It really did just dissolve in there. So, good regenerative farming is good for your health, it's good for the environment, it's good for the neighborhood. And that's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye.